The Godfather's cast finally reveals hidden secrets fans never noticed. What if I told you that the most iconic movie in cinema history almost never got made? That real mobsters tried to shut down production? And that the cast and crew barely survived making it? Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the untold stories behind your favorite actors. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on The Godfather. And trust me, the reality behind this masterpiece is more shocking than anything you saw on screen. The Godfather isn't just a movie, it's a cultural phenomenon that rewrote the rules of Hollywood, launched careers, and changed how we think about power, family, and loyalty. But here's what they don't teach you in film school. This cinematic masterpiece was forged in chaos, violence, and near-constant terror. If you're ready to discover the explosive secrets that nearly destroyed this legendary film, hit that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes content that Hollywood tries to keep buried. And stick around, because what I'm about to reveal will completely change how you watch The Godfather. But first, let me ask you this. What do you think was the biggest challenge in making The Godfather? Drop your guess in the comments. I bet you'll be shocked by the real answer. The story I'm about to tell you involves studio executives plotting against their own director, real mafia members making death threats, actors literally breaking bones for their craft, and improvised moments that became cinema gold. And that's just the beginning. The war against Coppola. Picture this. You're Francis Ford Coppola, a young director with big dreams and an even bigger vision. Paramount Pictures has just handed you what seems like the opportunity of a lifetime. Adapting Mario Puzo's best-selling novel, The Godfather. Sounds like a dream job, right? Wrong. It was a nightmare from day one. The studio executives didn't want an artistic masterpiece. They wanted a quick, cheap exploitation film. They slashed Coppola's budget, questioned every creative decision, and treated him like an inexperienced intern rather than a visionary filmmaker. But here's where it gets really insane. Paramount was actively plotting to fire Coppola almost from the moment filming began. They had replacement directors on speed dial, ready to swoop in and salvage what they saw as a sinking ship. Robert Evans, the studio head, was particularly brutal. He would show up on set unannounced, criticize Coppola in front of the entire crew, and make it clear that the director was expendable. The psychological warfare was relentless. Coppola later revealed that the constant threat of being fired actually pushed him to take bigger creative risks. "I figured if I was going down, I might as well go down swinging," he said in interviews. This desperation-fueled creativity would ultimately save the film. The casting battles were especially vicious. When Coppola insisted on Marlon Brando for Vito Corleone, the studio nearly revolted. Brando was considered box office poison, unreliable, difficult, and past his prime. The executives wanted a safer choice, someone who wouldn't rock the boat. Even more controversial was Coppola's fight for Al Pacino as Michael Corleone. The studio wanted a bigger name, someone with proven star power. They couldn't understand why Coppola was so obsessed with this relatively unknown stage actor who looked too small and intense for a leading man. But wait until you hear what the Mafia thought about all this, because their involvement makes the studio politics look like child's play. When real mobsters crashed the party. Here's something that will blow your mind. Actual members of organized crime families were watching every move during The Godfather's production, and they weren't happy about it. The Italian-American Civil Rights League, which had connections to real crime families, initially tried to shut down the entire production. They were concerned about how the film would portray Italian-Americans and didn't want their community associated with organized crime stereotypes. But the real terror began when individual mobsters started taking personal interest in the film. Joe Colombo, head of one of New York's 5 crime families, actually negotiated directly with the producers. The deal? Remove certain words from the script, particularly Mafia and Cosa Nostra, and the production could continue, refuse, and, well, let's just say the alternatives weren't pleasant. Cast and crew members reported receiving mysterious phone calls at their homes. Some were followed by unmarked cars. Others found threatening messages slipped under their doors. The message was clear: "We're watching you." James Caan later revealed that he received actual death threats during filming. Someone didn't appreciate his portrayal of the hot-headed Sonny Corleone and decided to make their feelings known through intimidation. The most chilling incident involved Robert Duvall. While filming a scene in Little Italy, a real mobster approached him and casually mentioned knowing where his family lived. It wasn't technically a threat, but everyone understood the implication. Coppola had to hire additional security, change filming locations at the last minute, and constantly look over his shoulder. The line between fiction and reality had completely blurred. Speaking of blurred lines between fiction and reality, what I'm about to tell you about the actor's transformations will shock you even more than the mob connections. Question for you: do you think real mobsters actually helped or hurt the authenticity of the film? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Method acting gone dangerously wrong. When we talk about actors becoming their characters, the Godfather cast took it to terrifying extremes. These weren't just performances. They were complete psychological transformations that left permanent marks on everyone involved. Let's start with Marlon Brando, the legendary method actor who almost disappeared entirely into Vito Corleone. Brando didn't just study the character, he inhabited him. He would stay in character between takes, speaking in that distinctive raspy whisper even during lunch breaks. The famous cotton balls in his mouth? Those weren't just for the audition. Brando continued using them throughout filming, creating a physical transformation that affected how he breathed, spoke, and even thought. Cast members reported that Brando seemed genuinely different. Older, more calculating, more dangerous. But Brando's transformation was nothing compared to what happened to James Caan. Caan threw himself so completely into playing Sonny that he began exhibiting the character's violent tendencies off-camera. He got into real fights, destroyed property, and developed a hair-trigger temper that terrified his co-workers. The line between James Caan and Sonny Corleone had vanished. During the famous scene where Sonny beats up his brother-in-law Carlo, Caan lost control. What you see on screen is real violence. Johnny Russo, who played Carlo, ended up with actual injuries, cracked ribs and facial bruising that required medical attention. Al Pacino's transformation might have been the most disturbing of all. The quiet, introspective actor completely internalized Michael's journey from war hero to cold-blooded Don. Friends and family reported that Pacino became increasingly isolated and calculating during production. Pacino later admitted that he struggled to separate himself from Michael for months after filming Wrapped. The character's ruthless pragmatism had seeped into his real personality, affecting his relationships and worldview. But these psychological transformations are nothing compared to the physical dangers and improvised moments that created cinema magic. And I mean literally created it by accident. Accidents that became iconic moments. Some of the most memorable scenes in The Godfather weren't scripted at all. They were born from accidents, improvisation, and pure creative instinct under pressure. The cat in Marlon Brando's lap during the opening scene? Complete accident. A stray cat had wandered onto the set that morning, and Brando, always the improviser, simply picked it up and incorporated it into his performance. That cat became an instant symbol of the Don's deceptive gentleness, a touch of softness that makes his power even more intimidating. The famous line, "Leave the gun, take the cannoli," was never in the original script. Richard Castellano, who played Clemenza, improvised it during filming. Coppola loved it so much that he kept it in the final cut. That single improvised line became one of the most quoted movie lines in history. Luca Brasi's nervous stammering when meeting the Don wasn't acting. It was real terror. Lenny Montana, the actor playing Brasi, was so intimidated by Brando that he could barely speak his lines. Coppola recognized that the genuine nervousness was perfect for the character and encouraged Montana to embrace it. The scene where Michael shoots Sollozzo and McCluskey in the restaurant contains one of the most shocking unscripted moments in cinema history. When Al Pacino's character retrieves the gun from behind the toilet, his hands are visibly shaking. That wasn't acting. Pacino was genuinely nervous about performing such an intense, career-defining scene. But here's the most incredible accident of all: the explosion that destroys Michael's first wife, Apollonia, and the car. The special effects team used too much explosive, creating a blast that was far more powerful than intended. The terrified reaction you see on Al Pacino's face? Completely genuine. What's your favorite unscripted moment from The Godfather? Comment below and let us know. And trust me, these happy accidents pale in comparison to the visual storytelling techniques that turned this movie into a work of art. Techniques that most viewers never even notice. The secret visual language that changed cinema. While audiences were captivated by the performances and story, cinematographer Gordon Willis was revolutionizing how movies look and feel. His visual techniques were so innovative that other filmmakers initially couldn't understand what he was doing. Willis earned the nickname the Prince of Darkness for his unprecedented use of shadows and low lighting. In most Hollywood films of that era, everything was brightly lit and clearly visible. Willis threw that rulebook out the window. Look closely at any scene in The Godfather and you'll notice that characters' eyes are often hidden in shadow. This wasn't poor lighting, it was deliberate psychological storytelling. Willis understood that when you can't see someone's eyes clearly, they become more mysterious, more dangerous, more unknowable. The darkness literally represents moral corruption. The deeper a character sinks into the world of organized crime, the more shadows consume them. It's visual metaphor at its most sophisticated. The famous oranges scattered throughout the film aren't just decorative fruit, they're harbingers of death. Every time oranges appear on screen, violence follows. Vito Corleone is buying oranges when he's shot. Oranges are on the table during the meeting of the 5 families. An orange peel is in Vito's mouth when he dies in the garden. This wasn't accidental. Production designer Dean Tavoularis and Willis deliberately placed oranges as visual warnings, creating a subliminal language that audiences feel even if they don't consciously recognize it. The framing techniques were equally revolutionary. Characters are constantly shown through doorways, windows, and reflections. This creates a sense that we're spying on private moments, that we're glimpsing secrets we shouldn't see. When Michael murders his enemies at the end, the cross-cutting between the baptism and the assassinations wasn't just good editing, it was moral commentary. The visual juxtaposition of religious ceremony and brutal violence forces viewers to confront the contradiction at the heart of Michael's character. But even these groundbreaking visual techniques couldn't prevent the personal costs that making this film extracted from everyone involved. The human cost of cinematic greatness. Making The Godfather didn't just change cinema, it changed lives, and not always for the better. The intense pressure, constant threats, and psychological demands of the production left permanent scars on cast and crew members. Francis Ford Coppola suffered a nervous breakdown during post-production. The stress of fighting the studio, managing difficult personalities, and creating a masterpiece under impossible conditions pushed him to his breaking point. He later described the experience as surviving a war. Al Pacino's career was launched into the stratosphere, but his personal life crumbled. The intensity of playing Michael Corleone, combined with sudden fame, led to relationship problems and a period of depression that lasted years. James Caan's violent immersion in Sonny's character had lasting effects on his temperament and relationships. Friends reported that Caan seemed genuinely different after filming, more aggressive, less trusting, permanently changed by inhabiting such a violent character. Even Marlon Brando, despite his legendary status, was affected. The role required him to confront themes of aging, legacy, and mortality that hit closer to home than he expected. Brando later said that playing Vito Corleone forced him to think seriously about his own legacy for the first time. The crew faced their own challenges. Cinematographer Gordon Willis was initially blacklisted by other studios because his revolutionary lighting techniques were considered too experimental and risky. It took years before Hollywood recognized his genius. Several marriages broke up during or shortly after production. The intense, all-consuming nature of creating this film left little time or emotional energy for personal relationships. Here's a question that might surprise you. Do you think great art requires personal sacrifice? Or could The Godfather have been just as good without all the suffering? Share your thoughts below. But all of this pain and sacrifice would ultimately create something unprecedented, a cultural phenomenon that reshaped not just Hollywood, but American society itself. How The Godfather rewrote the rules of power. The Godfather didn't just win Academy Awards, it fundamentally changed how Americans think about power, loyalty, and success. The film's influence extends far beyond entertainment into business, politics, and social relationships. Corporate executives began adopting the language and imagery of the film. "I'll make him an offer he can't refuse" became a boardroom cliché. The idea of conducting business with a mixture of charm and implied threat became known as Godfather tactics. Political analysts noticed that The Godfather changed how Americans viewed leadership. The film presented a complex portrait of authority. Don Corleone is simultaneously a loving family man and a ruthless killer. This duality resonated with audiences who were becoming more cynical about traditional authority figures. The movie industry itself was transformed. The Godfather proved that audiences were hungry for sophisticated, adult-oriented storytelling. It paved the way for the new Hollywood movement that gave unprecedented creative control to directors like Scorsese, Spielberg, and Lucas. But perhaps the most significant impact was on how Italian Americans were portrayed in popular culture. Before The Godfather, Italian-American characters in films were usually either comedic stereotypes or one-dimensional villains. The Godfather presented organized crime figures as complex human beings with rich inner lives, strong family bonds, and coherent moral codes. This was revolutionary. It forced audiences to see these characters as fully realized people rather than cartoon villains. The film's influence on fashion was equally dramatic. The tailored suits, slicked-back hair, and understated elegance of the Corleone family became aspirational. Men began dressing more formally, adopting the classic masculine style that the film celebrated. What aspect of The Godfather's cultural impact do you find most interesting? The business influence, the fashion changes, or something else entirely? Let us know in the comments. And speaking of lasting impact, what I'm about to reveal about the film's technical innovations will blow your mind. Innovations that every modern movie still uses today. Technical innovations that every movie uses today. The Godfather introduced filmmaking techniques that seem standard today but were revolutionary in 1972. These innovations became the foundation for modern cinema. The sound design was unprecedented. Walter Murch, the film's sound editor, created what he called sound perspective, the idea that audio should reflect a character's emotional state, not just what's happening on screen. During tense scenes, background noise becomes muffled and distorted. When characters are emotional, their heartbeats become audible. When violence erupts, the sound becomes sharp and brutal. This wasn't just technical wizardry. It was emotional manipulation at the highest level. The editing rhythms established patterns that action movies still follow today. Quick cuts during violence, lingering shots during emotional moments, and precise timing that builds tension without losing narrative flow. But the most influential innovation was the integration of character development with plot advancement. Previous Hollywood films often treated these as separate elements. You had action scenes and character scenes. The Godfather proved that every moment could do both simultaneously. Watch any scene in the film, and you'll notice that plot information is revealed through character interaction. We learn about the criminal enterprise through family dynamics. We understand power structures through personal relationships. This integration became the gold standard for sophisticated screenwriting. The film's approach to violence was equally revolutionary. Instead of glorifying brutality, The Godfather showed violence as shocking and consequential. Each act of violence has emotional weight and lasting consequences for the characters involved. This responsible approach to depicting violence influenced generations of filmmakers who understood that audiences were sophisticated enough to appreciate complexity and moral ambiguity. But beyond all the technical innovations and cultural impact, there's one aspect of The Godfather's legacy that continues to shape how we understand storytelling itself: the mythology that lives forever. 50 years after its release, The Godfather has transcended entertainment to become modern mythology. Like ancient Greek tales or Shakespearean tragedies, it tells universal stories about power, family, loyalty, and corruption that resonate across cultures and generations. The character of Michael Corleone has become an archetypal figure, the reluctant hero who becomes the thing he once fought against. This narrative pattern appears throughout literature, from Macbeth to Walter White in Breaking Bad. The Godfather didn't invent this story, but it perfected it for modern audiences. The film's exploration of the American dream remains devastatingly relevant. The Corleone family represents immigrant ambition taken to its logical extreme. They achieve wealth, power, and respect through violence and corruption, a dark mirror of legitimate American success stories. Don Vito Corleone's philosophy of loyalty and respect has influenced real-world business leaders, politicians, and social movements. The idea that relationships matter more than rules, that personal honor trumps legal obligation, continues to shape how people navigate complex social situations. The film's portrayal of family dynamics, the tension between personal desires and family obligations, speaks to universal human experiences. Every family struggles with loyalty versus independence, tradition versus progress, love versus duty. Here's our final question for you. What do you think The Godfather teaches us about power and morality that's still relevant today? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing different perspectives. But perhaps the most lasting impact of The Godfather is how it elevated the entire medium of filmmaking. It proved that movies could be art, that popular entertainment could grapple with serious themes, and that audiences were hungry for sophisticated storytelling. The eternal legacy. The making of The Godfather was a miracle of creative survival. Against all odds, studio interference, mob threats, budget constraints, and personal sacrifice, Francis Ford Coppola and his team created something eternal. Every frame of this film was fought for. Every performance was forged under pressure. Every technical innovation emerged from necessity and desperation. The result was a masterpiece that changed cinema forever. The dark secrets behind The Godfather's production reveal a fundamental truth about great art. It often emerges from conflict, struggle, and the willingness to risk everything for a vision. The chaos and danger that surrounded this production weren't obstacles to overcome. They were integral to creating something magnificent. Today, The Godfather stands as proof that commercial success and artistic achievement aren't mutually exclusive. It remains profitable, influential, and culturally relevant because it took audiences seriously and refused to compromise its vision. The film's legacy continues to evolve. New generations discover its power, new filmmakers study its techniques, and new audiences find fresh meanings in its complex moral landscape. It has achieved true immortality, the kind reserved for the greatest works of human creativity. If you enjoyed diving deep into these incredible behind-the-scenes secrets, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content that reveals the untold stories behind your favorite films. Share this video with fellow movie lovers who need to know the real story behind this masterpiece. The Godfather reminds us that the greatest achievements often come from the most difficult journeys. The blood, sweat, fear, and determination that went into making this film created something that will outlive all of us. In the end, The Godfather is more than a movie. It's a testament to the power of artistic vision, the importance of creative courage, and the magic that happens when talented people refuse to accept limitations. Thank you for being part of our community. What kind of videos would you like us to make next? Let us know in the comments. See you on the next video.